Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vela-Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vela-Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vela-Williamson. This season, our focus is on Latinas and public relations. Today, I'm joined by two guests, Carmen Boon and Amelia Taurel folks. Carmen Boon serves as the Vice President for Public Affairs at Food Bank for New York City, amassing decades of experience in crafting strategic communication strategies and spearheading social impact and advocacy initiatives. As a first-generation immigrant from Venezuela and a Fulbright scholar, Carmen has contributed to various New York City government agencies, tackling outreach challenges and managing crisis communications that provide critical services to millions. Her efforts in social impact communications within the nonprofit and public sectors have garnered her and her team's numerous recognitions, including the Shorty Impact and PR Week Purpose Awards. Carmen is an alumna of both the New School in New York City and Universidad Católica Andrés Bello in Caracas. Amelia Taurel Folks is an accredited PR professional and strategic communicator with a vision and passion for helping brands position themselves for growth. She has more than 18 years of experience in public relations and thought leadership, supporting a variety of clients in the fields of technology, government, B2C and B2B, financial services, and nonprofit sectors. Welcome, Carmen and Amelia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great to be here with you, Melissa. Thanks for having us.
Well, I'm excited to learn more about your origin stories and background, so let's get into it. How did you get into public relations? What's your work like today? Carmen, we'll start with you.
Sure. I first went to college for journalism, but my first real job, even before graduating from college, was in an in-house PR and communications office. This was at a great a kind of arts institution in Caracas. So, of course, journalism school was great. It exceeded all my expectations. I wanted to be this great journalist, kind of like breaking news, building content for the masses. It also gave me this portal for understanding and immersing myself in various areas, from politics to social issues, in a big and complex city like Caracas. Although, of course, I aspired to be this kind of like great journalist, as I said before, but it was actually this one in-house PR experience that kind of like gave me a lot of great kind of inspiration to pursue a career in this area. I was only like 21 or 22, and that was a great experience for me. I did get to work in a newspaper too, after graduating from college, but that was actually a bittersweet experience because at that job I experienced, like kind of like harsh competition, toxicity, severe kind of like scrutiny from my supervisors. So when I moved to New York City to study a master's degree, I also kind of had to face all the difficult kind of like competitive media market in a big city. I faced rejections due to my visa sponsorship issues, right? I had to find an employer that could sponsor a visa for me. And I also have to kind of like, I had a very short experience in journalism. So, and also had no network, to be honest. And so that was a wake-up call for me. And I had to pull an emergency plan to find a job and all of that. So I decided that my education in journalism and my short experience were great assets to find my way into PR and communications. And it was exactly like that, right? So I first got into global communications, kind of like space, working for the Venezuela mission to the UN. And later, my jobs were in the local government in New York City and also in the nonprofit sector. My experience includes, working in strategic communication, social marketing, and media outreach in projects and organizations working towards poverty alleviation and also economic mobility. And all of that with a kind of like human rights lens of, for access and opportunity for people in need. And I've built communications plans for many initiatives, from programs to support and revitalize communities to national public policy advocacy. At Food Bank, I work to raise awareness in the public profile of the city's largest hunger relief organization. And we do that through targeted advocacy campaigns, and that their aim at supporting New Yorkers in need on their path to food security.
That's awesome. Global perspective, a lot of chutzpah, as some may say. Carmen, I love your walk into PR. Amelia, what was your path like?
It's interesting because similar to what Carmen experienced, obviously not the same, but I went to college kind of with this idea that I was going to work in global affairs. I had a goal to either join the Peace Corps or the UN, and was really guided by that. I basically targeted my studies in policy, Latin American policy, and then had a journalism minor. So because I loved to write and loved everything about reporting what was happening in Latin America. So I was very geared towards that work and thought that was that was going to be my life. And my work, it didn't happen as I had planned, which, I'll tell you later that my path to public relations was very nonlinear. This part of my college career, I actually never had heard of public relations. I went to a university that didn't even have a PR degree program. So I was very naive to what PR was. Was never part of a PR SSA group, thing like that. But one of the things that I had to take was a crisis communications class as part of my journalism degree. And like a spark was lit because I really enjoyed being in that crisis moment and having to solve a problem for like a made up client. And so something must have happened because it just stayed in the back of my mind. And my first real job out of college was at a policy center, and I worked for a think tank. And I just easily moved into things that what people would say, oh, well, that's more communications. We did event planning. We did work in the policy arena. I started to do a little bit of writing for our newsletter, but I was always pulled into, oh, could you write this press release, which I didn't even know what it was. And I was taught how to do that. Or can you help plan this event? And so shortly after that work, I moved to another nonprofit in the tech space that basically my job was all communications. And I kind of learned by fire. And slowly but surely, every job after that, I really started to move more and more away from policy and into public relations or communications. And I just feel like that spark did something for me that really leaned in that direction for me. I was always really passionate about journalism. I thought if I didn't go into global affairs, maybe I'll be a reporter. I took a copy editing certificate while I lived in San Diego at UCSD, thinking, well, I can always copyright for a newspaper. And just it seems like every turn I went to, I got pushed in the other direction to go into public relations, whether it was the job or an activity or a volunteer activity that I was working on. So I think there were higher powers or those around me who just thought, you're better at this and this is what you're going to do. So throughout my career, I moved around a lot because my husband was in the military, and every job I took, I always landed in a communication space. And this is before I went back to school for my master's and had an official public relations background. So this is everything learning by fire, kind of learning on the job. Eventually working for a big agency at Fleischman Hillard when I moved back to Texas, I really learned the ropes and then got the inspiration to go back to college and actually get an official degree in public relations. But I realized this is something that I was passionate about and I really love doing. And I also realized that I could do good work and impact communities just as much as I wanted to if I had done global affairs. I focused a lot of my public relations career in multicultural nonprofit work. And so I was helping work on things that brought communities up, whether it was in the education space or in Latino communities with housing during a housing crisis, or financial literacy or access to education. I was constantly finding myself working on work accounts or clients that really helped to empower communities that were either not had didn't have access to some of the privileged things that other communities might have had. So I just found myself doing that, and I really felt good about it. And I will say that I geared away from that and did more some B2C and tech work for a little bit. That was a little less giving back to the community and a little bit more self-serving to the company. And I realized right away after, 6 or 7 years that that wasn't really the work that made me like get up every morning. And so I've come back to the nonprofit work where I am right now, Raise Your Hand Texas. And I'm working really hard with a group of people that are super passionate about ensuring we have good policy and advocating at the Capitol here in Texas for public education. We have 5.5 million students in Texas that are in our public schools, with a situation both at the national and state level where we're trying to tear down schools and tear down our teachers and everything that surrounds our schools. So I think this is something that that really drives my passion, and I'm really happy to do it.
That's great. I love both of your background stories. It's very common for a lot of pros. I mean, I can't even count the number of times I've said on this podcast how often we find our careers with action, by doing, by trying, by iterating. And it's definitely not a nice A to Z clean path for a lot of people. And I think that that's really important for us to represent and share. So I thank you for doing that. And yeah, there can be so much purpose in public relations if we are thoughtful and intentional with our work. So I have you here today because you are both new book authors in the inaugural Latinas in Public Relations anthology. What inspired you to share your stories in our new book, Latinas in Public Relations, Shaping Communications, Communities, and Culture?
Well, don't laugh at me, but I'm going to say, and I'm going to be very honest, I was less inspired as I was motivated by amazing women that surrounded me, and that said I needed to tell my story. I think this is true for a lot of us in public relations. We are used to being behind the scenes, and this is something I like to do, is be behind the scenes. And so it's really hard for me to I will say that it's being vulnerable to share my story. I always think, why does anybody care? There was nothing special. And, I had people like you, Melissa, and others, Audrey Ponzoy from APC Collective, and other women, including those in my family, who said, no, you should do this. This is a worthwhile endeavor, and people should hear about the work that you did and the fact that you didn't take a traditional trajectory, and that, you have immigrant parents, and that you made your career what it is because of the support of your family and the hard work that you did. And so at the end of the day, that's what motivated me to finally say, okay, I think I'm going to do this. It was very scary, and it still is, to think that people will have like a keyhole into my life, which I keep pretty private. So I'm nervous, but at the same time, really excited about what this book will do to help other women who are thinking about a career, either if it's not linear or if they're switching careers, either from being a reporter or something else. I think my story shows that you can start anywhere and still move into this career and find true passion and do things that make you feel really good about the work you do every day.
Yeah, this is my answer is going to be similar to Amelia in some ways, right? So I recently had to kind of rewire myself and also my career after experiencing some difficult job environments, right? Like just kind of like managing people and just all the dynamics of, our work environments, right? So when I was going through a lot of, self-reflection about myself, my career, my timing in the US, my work ethics, I also realized that I had been kind of like holding myself back all these years, right? All these 20 years of work, I have never kind of like done much to get myself out there, to share my knowledge, to also better support others, right, in this industry, aside from like work, my team in my jobs. So like Amelia, I also thought that I did not have much to share, and that my career stories were not very interesting. And that, at that time, I decided to do something bold for somebody like me, which is I started to write posts on LinkedIn about my experiences and my personal kind of like views and professional views on many things. And through that exercise, I had the opportunity to be asked or to propose myself to be a moderator or a panelist at professional association speaking events. And, at that time, I also contributed to my voice to academia, kind of like research and education in PR and communication. So I participated in a great research about Hispanic public relations. And those experiences forced me to create a narrative about myself and about what I have done in my career, something I have never done before. By the time this opportunity came along, also on LinkedIn and, through contacts that Melissa and I have in common, I was already feeling more confident about discussing my career in settings other than my own jobs or, with my team members or job interviews, right? So I was also, I have to confess, I'm also a big fan of essay compilations. I read many of them all the time. So the idea of being in one with Melissa, who I have been following on social media, but also on the PRSA newsletter, I was very excited to be part of a book with you and fellow Latinas in PR and communications. And also a big kind of like motivation for me was that this book really has great potential to be a fantastic resource for younger professionals in this area, but also students of PR and communications.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Carmen and Amelia. I think your accepting the invitation means everything, and it's going to mean so much to those who read your stories and have the opportunity to see themselves in your experiences, and that's what's so valuable about the 15 different stories we share is that we have different backgrounds, different generations, different specialties, different points of view. So across the author's story, there are connection points that are shared and they come up, and perseverance is one, taking a nonlinear path as we talked is definitely one, but feelings of doubt and overcoming that is prevalent too. Each story, though, I have had the advantage as I'm editing to read them all collectively, and they're definitely unique. So tell us a little bit of what's inside your story.
I really think that growing up in an industrial town that was built in a rainforest in Venezuela, in the southern Venezuela, set the foundation for my will to find opportunities for growth in not very hospitable environments, right? Industrial towns, like it was just, there's a lot of labor, a lot of kind of like hard work. But also like, there were little kind of like just, I had the fortune to go to a Jesuit school, and my Jesuit school was kind of like my center of operations in terms of like, I did everything there, right? Sports, arts, and all of that. So I took every opportunity I could to really kind of like grow as a person and also as a future professional. So I had two significant moves in my life. As everybody knows, I moved to the capital of Venezuela, Caracas, to study journalism. And a couple of years later, after graduation, I moved to New York City to pursue a master's degree. I faced early setbacks. I was let go of my first job after graduation. It will be a too long story to, just say that here, talk about that here. But I was also told at that same job that I could never write, that I could never be a good journalist or a good communicator. So I went through the challenges also to trying to find a job in New York City's competitive media market, right? Media job market without a network. So in my story, I talk about all these experiences and how they helped me realize that adaptability and flexibility are essential qualities for every professional in this area. I also mentioned how embracing my Latina identity, but especially my bilingualism with an accent, have been both an asset, but also a tremendous opportunity and a challenge. And that's something that I have never spoken about before. So I was very hesitant to put that in my story, but having a strong accent is not an issue in many professional settings in the US, but having it as a communications professional has been a significant challenge for me. For instance, I have been asked in job interviews whether I felt capable of being a spokesperson for my organizations, right? For organizations I was interviewing for, right? And so I knew that what was behind that question was a concern about my accent and my English skills, my English abilities. However, I have to say, having an accent has also helped me create deeper connections with my colleagues and also my organization's audiences. So I talk about all of that in my story.
That's really cool, Carmen, to hear how you've overcome some of those challenges and how they can relate. It's interesting that bilingualism is a theme for me as well, not so much because of my accent. I lived abroad, but I was born and raised in the States from my immigrant parents, and so I have the advantage of not having the accent. But I will say that my challenge in my career was that my Spanish wasn't ever strong enough, even though I grew up speaking in a Spanish household, and so I always wanted to use my bilingualism as a strength, but it sometimes was also my weakness, and I had to work really hard to get it to be professional, and so that was always a challenge for me. And I think to go back to the original question, in my story, it was definitely not linear. And I think a lot of that had to do with what was happening in my life. I got married really young, probably not recommend that anymore. But in my era, because that tells you my age, that was the thing to do. So I got married while I was in college, and my husband was in the military. And every couple of years, we got uprooted and moved. But I look back now and I think, how interesting my career has actually been, because I've worked at a policy think tank. I worked for a technology think tank. I've worked for a kitchen and bath manufacturer doing public relations. When people say, "What's the funniest thing you've ever done or the coolest thing?" And I think, well, I used to have to write press releases about flushing toilets and powerful urinals. And I have a lot of stories that I can tell about those days. And then the seriousness of working for a policy think tank or helping technology startups during the bubble of 2000. And then, once my career really got started, working at Fleischman Hillard, I was working on groundbreaking client work with the newly formed Department of Homeland Security, with the Office of National Drug Control Policy, helping Latino families understand the dangers of drugs for their families and children. This was in the early 2000s. And just the work that I got to do to really help my communities. And I noticed that there became a theme. And so I thought, okay, well, I've moved around a lot. I've tried different things. And what that did, now that I'm looking back in my almost 20-year career, is that it gave me exposure to a lot of different aspects of communications. And I've gotten to do so many different things that, if I had a really linear path, I probably wouldn't have been able to do. So it's exciting. And then the other thing is that every time I had to move, the fact that I was bilingual, maybe not at the standard that I wanted to be, but I kept working on, it gave me the advantage. And so I was able, that same kitchen and bath manufacturer was actually owned by a Chilean firm. And so the moment they found out I spoke even remotely a little amount of Spanish, they were like, "You're hired," because the CEO needed someone to help him translate all the board of directors meetings. And I ended up translating production meetings with our engineers and our salespeople, which is a whole nother story of funny that I can spend a whole podcast telling you about. And then when I got the job at Fleischman Hillard, I joined their FH Hispania group, which is way before DEI and ERGs were ever a thing. It was like a group of Hispanic PR professionals in the early 2000s that concentrated on work that clients needed for the Hispanic community. That was such a prestigious place to be asked to join. And then the work I got to do at a big B2C insurance company. I was leading multilingual and multicultural work for the entire country and for agents and our teams because I was one of very few people who spoke Spanish. So I realized that, all the different things that I thought were weaknesses or that would hold me back, like the moving around and not being strong, were actually strengths that I could use and I could hone in those skills. And so I was very lucky to always be surrounded by people who believed in me, especially women. I don't want to say that I haven't had male allies in my network because I absolutely have, but I think this is where the women around me, especially Latina women, have really been the strength to keep me going. As a new mom in a new city, as a start out at a new agency, when things at work got hard, when I just needed the advice of a professional, there was always another Latina I could ask, a network of women that could help me really focus my skill or decide where to go. So I am very lucky that I've always been surrounded by inspirational women who sometimes, shoved me in the direction that they thought I should be at or pushed me. Like, as I said earlier, motivated me to do something that I just wasn't sure I was ready to do. That even goes back to going back for my master's. I never thought I would go back to school. I was a mom with two small kids at home, a husband who was gone all the time for his work. I just didn't think it was in me. And she really said, how could you not? There needs to be more women like us with upper level degrees, and you are absolutely capable. And she just kind of like told me I needed to do it or said, you have to do it. And this is a woman I didn't even know, but she just pushed me in that direction and really motivated me. So I guess I would say I'm very lucky that I've had that network of women that have really pushed me in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's going to be the power of this anthology is that this is scalable. It's written, all the encouragement and call to action. And if I can do it, you can do it is in written form. And that means it moves and it'll live beyond us. So that's what I'm so excited about because, yeah, there's a lot of power in hearing how someone did it, but also that it wasn't easy. Right? But it's possible. So I love your stories, ladies, on that. Well, you've got this amazing background. We heard a little bit about your specialties and what you're doing today, but we talked about the power of insights and advice. So what advice would you share with someone who may be considering going after either a promotion or taking a scary step forward in their career?
Well, I think I'll go back to my advice that has helped me. And that's, seeking the support and advice of your network, whether it's a network of allies from any community. If you don't have that network, you can ask anybody in your PR network on LinkedIn. But I always have been helped by reaching out to the women in my community, especially the Latinas that surround me. And some of them are not in PR, but most of them are. But they give me that self-confidence to go after, let's say, a promotion. I remember asking a colleague who I worked with, when she left this very comfortable, stable job, were you scared? Was it scary to go somewhere new that isn't so comfortable? And she was like, it was. But I really pushed for more money. I needed this job to give us more, and it wasn't. And so I went here and I asked for more money. And this is how I did it. And I remember when I decided to leave, I went back to her years later and I said, how was it that you asked for more money? Like, give me the advice so that I can do it too. And she was more than happy to do so. And I think that's the thing we forget to do that our male colleagues do all the time is have that confidence to one, seek the advice and support of others, but also to advocate for ourselves. Ask for that promotion, ask for 10% more in your raise, or if you're applying for a new job and they give you a number, ask for a little bit more. And that's the advice I've gotten from the women around me that have really supported me.
I love that. Carmen, what advice would you share?
Yeah, no, my answer is also very similar to Amelia's. In the past, I will go and make bold moves in my career without kind of having that sounding board. Just without really like kind of like sharing my expectations and my way of delivering that to with people that I trusted in my network, right? Now, that is a priority for me to really have those conversations first to see how I sound, to see how everything kind of like looks to others, right? I would say, cultivating those allies at work and outside of work is very important for everything you want to do professionally. This is something that, you have to really have those people that can back up, validate your work, that can back you up when you need it, right? I think when you have that kind of like great reputation and then go ahead and make a bold move, you already are kind of like ahead of the curve, right? You are already you have a lot of kind of the things in your favor. So make sure you do that. I would say also that discovering and refining what you're really good at is very important. Sometimes we go about our careers and we take jobs and we leave a job, take another job, and we don't take the time to really define and be in peace and embrace what we are really good at. So this is something I always tell younger professionals in my teams, in other teams, because I think when you know that, there's nothing that can really stop you, right? When you talk about it you have a lot of confidence because this is something that you have already studied about yourself. So, yeah, I would say, either that being a promotion or just moving to another country like I did in my early 20s, I would say this is something that, it's a proven formula for you to succeed in making these kind of like very ambitious or bold moves in whatever you want to do in your career.
I think that's really, really important, Carmen, what you shared, and Amelia, the aspects that you shared too, asking for help, building that relationship with others who can be supportive of you. I think that's super important. And I think that that's some of the advice sometimes college students don't receive. They don't realize how important that network's going to be. When I talk to aspiring pros, I'm very blunt and saying, it's really cool what your friends are doing, and we love our families, but they may not be the network you need to help you in your career. Unless they're doing the work or in those fields, like they may not be the advice you need. So you need to start transitioning from being where they are and doing what they do to working with the peers that can actually mentor you, support you, advocate for you, back you up, like you said, Carmen. I think that's important. And then actually defining and refining what you want to be known as good at is important. And so I think for me, as the main author of this collection, what I'm probably going to be most proud of is that I really encouraged the women that are being published in this book to focus on themselves for a moment. Think about their personal brands, help make their career more adaptable and resilient, no matter what may come in the next few years, because they've now been in a space that other pros haven't as a book author. So I think this is a great illustration of all what you all are saying to summarize your important advice. So thank you. Well, ladies, this has been a great conversation. We could go on for hours with your backgrounds, I'm sure. But I want to wrap it up with a question I like to ask all my guests so we can kind of think about how we communicate. So what does smart talk mean to you?
When I think of the word smart talk, I think of it as a type of talk where you sound confident, you're articulate and eloquent, you're being strategic, and you're using critical thinking. And that helps you to be the person that can help build relationships in the work that you do.
Yeah, I would say, when you smart talk, you are keeping in mind always the audience that you are speaking to, right? So you want to deliver messages that are helping that audience. sometimes we find people talking only to, it's kind of like self-serving. You have to always kind of like keep in mind what's helping others, right? I also feel that to be able to smart talk, you have to be authentic. You have to really find your authenticity in whatever you do. What is your unique value, rather than comparing yourself to others or like trying to be like others in this industry or this field, right? I think first you have to build trust with yourself, and also like foster a connection with yourself to be able to deliver a smart talk. So that's kind of like my, that's my one thought about, this type of conversations. And this one has been a great smart talk for I'm sure for Amelia and for myself.
I love it. And let's be clear, smart talk can happen in any language and with any accent. So I love this. So what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you? I'm sure you're going to have some new fans and people might want to reach out with some questions.
For me, LinkedIn is always a great professional place for people to reach out. I will recommend, though, if I haven't met you, you can follow me, or if you want to connect, put a note in the connection request so I know how we know each other or why we're connecting. So that helps a lot. I'm also on Blue Sky, which is kind of my way of moving away from some of the junk that I've seen elsewhere on social media and really posting about some news and PR. And there's a large group of public relations and marketing professionals on Blue Sky and are journalists. And so for me, that's really important because that's what Twitter used to be, which is a great place for information sharing between two professional groups that really rely on each other. And so Blue Sky has become that for me. And so I'm there as well.
For me, it's definitely LinkedIn. I have taken to the platform for many, I not only, of course, post on LinkedIn, but it's my main source of a lot of information for my work, my life. I also have taken the time to get to know the community, the different communities there. So whenever somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, as Amelia said, a nice note, is really helpful. So I don't have to look you up and kind of like see who you are and all of that. And also, I am very good at setting up a little bit of a kind of like meet and greets with people that reaches out on LinkedIn, because I feel that it's if you are doing that, and there's a lot of people doing that, right? So if people have kind of refining their techniques to reach out to people on LinkedIn. So I take that very, very seriously. And 99% of people that get in touch with me via LinkedIn, I get back to them almost within 24 hours. And I try to set up time to talk to them and see how we can help each other.
Yes, let's keep it profesh and go to LinkedIn or maybe Blue Sky, as Amelia mentioned, and leave a note. You can say you heard them on the Smart Talk series podcast and you appreciate what they had to say. And just like any other pitch, it has to be tailored and relevant. So good tips, ladies. Thank you. Well, thank you, Carmen and Amelia, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us today.
Thank you for having me and for having us. It's been great, and we look forward to more soon with the rest of the fellow Latinas in our book.
And same. I really loved getting a chance to share with you, Melissa and Carmen, and just hearing your story and seeing how there are similarities as well as differences in everything that we do. And I think that's what makes us special, unique, as well as a collective. And I just love that. So thanks, Melissa, for bringing us together.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. We love covering communication topics that elevate our industry practice. If you'd like to go deeper, you can work with me as a coach, trainer, consultant, or hire my firm, MVW Communications, for strategic communication and public relations services. My industry books, Smart Talk, Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know, and Latinas in Public Relations, Shaping Communications, Communities, and Culture, are also available for purchase on Amazon. Grab your copy there, and please leave us a supportive review. Book reviews and podcast reviews help more aspiring or hardworking pros find our resources. As always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.